there has been yet another shootout in the US. This time, it's being viewed as a major security threat. Two National Guard members were shot near the White House by an Afghan national. The two soldiers are said to be in critical condition. Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser has described the attack as a targeted shooting. President Donald Trump has condemned it as an act of terror and a heinous assault.
I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C., and I, too, want to send my thoughts and prayers to the families of the guardsmen and to the guardsmen who are in critical condition in a local hospital. What we know, Andrea, is that this is a targeted shooting. One individual who appeared to target these guardsmen, that individual has been taken into custody.
What was your thought while you were hearing those shots?
Kind of saying, are those gunshots? Pretty much, you know. And then once we got about halfway down I Street, another round of gunshots were heard. So we ran a little bit further down the street. Then, some people, security guards, started coming out. They were like, it's probably just construction. So I walked back to get my lunch to where I was before, and that's, when I witnessed the scene. They had somebody pinned down. They were yelling at him to stay down. Then there was a utility truck that they moved. By this point, there was just one police car there, and they moved the utility truck on the other side. Unfortunately, were National Guard men. One they were trying to resuscitate. And then there were a couple more National Guards that were kind of hugging each other that were obviously very upset about the situation.
The Department of Homeland Security has identified the suspect as Rahmanullah Lakanwal, an Afghan national who came to the United States in 2021 under Operation Allies Welcome, a Biden-era program launched in August 2021 to protect vulnerable Afghans in the wake of the U.S. military withdrawal from Afghanistan. Lakanwal had applied for asylum in 2024 and it was granted by the Trump administration in April this year.
The FBI will lead out on that mission with our interagency partners to include the Department of Homeland Security, Secret Service, ATF, DEA, and we're thankful for the mayor's assistance in this matter, the Metropolitan Police Department and their skills in investigating homicides and gun shootings in this city is exceptional. We will work together collaboratively because this is a matter of national security, because it's a matter of pride. President Trump has been informed. We've been in contact with the White House. We will shortchange the American public with no resources to make sure we find and safeguard our nation's capital right here in Washington, D.C., and bring anyone responsible for this heinous act of violence to justice. I would lastly like to add to the American public and the world, please send your prayers to those brave warriors who are in critical condition and their families.
Very productive meetings, but I want to start by saying after those meetings, myself and my team were notified that two National Guardsmen have been shot in Washington, D.C., critically wounded. The shooter shot in a cowardly, dastardly act targeting the best of America, heroes willing to serve in Washington, D.C., serve for people they don't know and they've never met, because they love their country and their capital and their community. They were willing to do dangerous things others were not, because they love their fellow Americans. Someone decided to turn that into targeting National Guardsmen. That will only stiffen our resolve. We will never back down. We will secure our capital. We will secure our cities. In fact, this happened just steps away from the White House. It will not stand. And that's why President Trump has asked me, and I will ask the Secretary of the Army, to the National Guard, to add 500 additional troops, National Guardsmen, to Washington, D.C. This will only stiffen our resolve to ensure that we make Washington, D.C. safe and beautiful. The drop in crime has been historic.
Most Afghans who arrived under Operation Allies Welcome were allowed to enter and remain in the U.S. for 2 years. More than 40% of the migrants admitted in the program were eligible for special immigrant visas because they took great risks to help the United States. Over 190,000 Afghans have resettled in the US under Operation Allies Welcome, which was later renamed Enduring Welcome. It took only a few hours for Trump to turn what he called an act of evil and an act of terror into a full-blown argument for an even more intense crackdown on immigration.
We're not going to put up with these kind of assaults on law and order by people who shouldn't even be in our country. We must now re-examine every single alien who has entered our country from Afghanistan under Biden, and we must take all necessary measures to ensure the removal of any alien from any country who does not belong here or add benefit to our country. If they can't love our country, we don't want them. America will never bend and never yield in the face of terror. And at the same time, we will not be deterred from the mission these service members were so nobly fulfilling. That is why tonight I can announce that I have directed the Department of War to mobilize an additional 500 troops to help protect our capital city.
Shortly after Trump's remarks, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced it had stopped processing all immigration cases related to Afghan immigrants indefinitely, pending further review. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has asked for 500 more National Guard troops to be deployed to Washington, D.C. It also asked a federal appeals court for an emergency stay of an order from a federal judge to remove the National Guard from Washington, D.C. Last week, the judge ruled the deployment was unlawful. Since taking office in January this year, Trump has enacted sweeping changes to U.S. refugee policy and foreign assistance, cutting off thousands of Afghans who helped the U.S. during the war from critical resources. The president, speaking on video from his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, pivoted quickly from paying tribute to the victims of the tragedy to blaming the Biden administration for bringing the alleged shooter to the United States. He said the incident underscores the single greatest national security threat facing our nation. He also used the moment to drive home his campaign against other migrants in politically charged remarks that went far beyond Afghanistan. This comes at a time when his administration is moving to re-interview some refugees admitted under President Joe Biden and revoking temporary protected status for those from several dangerous hotspots around the world. Trump lashed out at Somali immigrants in Minnesota despite there being no apparent connection with the DC shooting. He claimed they're ripping out our country and ripping apart that once great state. Trump described Somalia as a country that has no laws, no water, no military, no nothing. While the exact circumstances of this incident are not fully known, the FBI has long warned about the danger of self-radicalized individuals from immigrant countries becoming inspired by groups such as ISIS or online propaganda and carrying out attacks on U.S. soil. Some are also asking whether there were intelligence failures by the Trump administration ahead of this attack at a time when government agencies are accused of diverting resources from national security to immigration enforcement. Trump has now vowed to re-examine every single alien who came to the U.S. from Afghanistan in remarks that are likely to create fear among law-abiding immigrants, many of whom helped the U.S. military and diplomats at considerable risk to themselves and their families during America's longest war. At the same time, Trump seems to be making a case for the continued deployment of National Guard soldiers in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere. A political storm has raged around the National Guard since Trump ordered it into some American cities. Now the debate will sharpen over the Guard's role and the administration's attempts to militarize law enforcement. Once the motive of the assailant has been established, there will be scrutiny about the unusual nature of the mission that the troops are being asked to undertake in peacetime on domestic soil. Critics have warned that deploying troops was unnecessary and carries authoritarian overtones. Trump has argued that his Washington, D.C. crackdown is a huge success and that people now feel safe in the capital. Critics of Trump's approach argue that, far from making D.C. safer, the presence of uniformed troops on the streets could cause more tensions and the soldiers could themselves be vulnerable. The shootings in Washington, D.C. are the latest shocking outburst of public violence in the U.S. in a year that saw the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk and killing of a state lawmaker and her husband in Minnesota.